What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel and to another episode of What is Wrong with Your Overwatch League team. Today, I just wanted to take some time to talk about the NYXL because they have been on my mind a whole bunch since their game against the Dragons last night. Yes, I know that I usually make these videos about teams that are truly struggling, but after yet another shortcoming in the playoffs, I feel that making an exception isn't that big of a deal here. Plus, the NYXL technically are struggling, just not in the traditional sense. While they aren't having a hard time picking up regular season wins, 2 of their 3 playoff pushes have been absolute disasters this year. Imagine going 7-0 in both Stage 1 and Stage 2, but getting embarrassed in the first round of the playoffs both times. Don't get me wrong, all credit in the world goes to both Seoul and Shanghai in their wins. They used 2 very effective game plans that worked to perfection. But whether you believe the NYXL choked, through, or something in between during these 2 matches, we all have to admit that they played some very sloppy Overwatch in both of these games. So now this begs the question, what is wrong with the NYXL when it comes to playoff games? Why is it that they underperform more often than not during these matches? Well, for one, it's extremely obvious that pressure gets to them. I have no idea why exactly, but nerves seem to be at an all-time high. Now, I will admit there have been previous stages where the NYXL actually lived up to the hype, like in stages 2 and 3 last year, and a tiny bit in stage 2 this year as well. But out of 8 total playoff appearances, if you count overall playoffs from last year, they have underperformed in 6 out of 8 appearances. In stage 1 last year, they got reverse swept by London. Then in stage 4, they got dominated by the Valiant, while nearly getting reverse swept by Dallas in the round before that. In overall playoffs, they lost to Philly. Now in 2019, they lose in the first round, even after going a perfect 7-0 during stages 1 and 3. There's a common theme that many of these losses share with each other. For some reason, any game plan the NYXL has just seems to be very poorly executed while the players drastically underperform. Many of their previous shortcomings have already been thoroughly analyzed by both fans and experts alike, so let's focus a bit more on their recent loss to the Shanghai Dragons to get a better idea of some of the silly mistakes they seem to make in the games they choke. Let's talk about some of the big things I noticed from this game. And if I miss anything that you think is worth bringing up, then feel free to share it down in the comment section. Okay, so problem number 1 I noticed has to do with Mono. If I'm going to be completely honest, I believe that he was a huge issue for his team during this entire set. I'm assuming the NYXL wanted him to do this, but Mono was being far too aggressive on Winston. Go back and watch the game if you don't believe me. It kind of felt like he was dying every other team fight. His goal for the entirety of the set seemed to revolve around pressuring Shanghai's support line, and more often than not, this act of aggression seemed to fail. There were moments where it did work, don't get me wrong. There were a few fights on Volskaya Industries in particular where his disruptiveness proved to be quite effective, and it usually resulted in either killing Koma or Luffy. However, these Winston dives failed more than they succeeded, let me tell you. If this was the plan the NYXL coaches drew up, then Mono and his team failed to execute. I don't know if Mono got too carried away or if there was some miscommunication with his team, but his death rate on Winston was unacceptable. We've seen plans of attack that resolve around the Winston making individual plays find success in the past, but what the NYXL simply did not work, and they should have adjusted, in my opinion, by either making Mono play more passively or by having his teammates give him more support. Even though Mecha was in the game, it kind of felt like the protection he gave Mono was non-existent sometimes. And even when Mono was on Rhine, it still seemed like he was not getting enough support. Jonek, Animo, and Libero just couldn't keep up. His health was usually kind of low. You definitely can't put all the blame on the NYXL here though. Shanghai did an excellent job of pressuring Mono. Constantly keeping the main tank low has proven to be a very effective strategy against the NYXL in the past. Usually the rest of the team seems to panic and make some sort of mistake because they don't want Mono to die. Jonek in particular struggles with this by having some questionable trance usages, and yesterday proved to be no different. He's still making the same mistakes even after all this time. It's funny though, if the rest of Mono's teammates actually did something while he was busy risking his life 24/7, then maybe things could have been different. But nobody stepped up consistently. Jonek and Nene made some nice plays here and there, but that's just about it. Oh, and speaking of Nene, can we take a few moments to talk about how he was the one playing Sombra instead of Sabiobi? I guess the NYXL wanted to throw the Dragons off guard by running Mecha with Nene on Sombra. Regardless of what their mindset was, this plan of theirs failed miserably. Whenever Nene was on the Sombra, it mostly felt like he wasn't doing much to contribute. His EMPs were kind of shaky at times, and when they were on point, the rest of the team couldn't really capitalize with any sort of good follow-up. And he also wasn't being enough of an annoyance in my opinion. One of your goals as a Sombra player is to be a pest, especially when it comes to attacking the enemy support line. I was kind of hoping Nene would dive in with Mono to kill the supports when he played Sombra, but he really didn't do this surprisingly. Meko getting the start over Sabiobi was also a bit of a head scratcher for me. Like, it makes sense to have Meko's Devo to counter Pharah because the Dragons do like to put Ding on her pretty often if he's not on Sombra, and to the NYXL's defense, the Dragons actually played a lot of Pharah during this set. They didn't run nearly as much Sombra as you'd expect. Having Meko in that sense is definitely understandable, but am I the only one who feels like Meko pretty much did nothing for this entire game? He couldn't really make his presence be felt on the D.Va for some reason, and he didn't do much about the Pharah, and him alongside Mono could have done a better job of pressuring DM on Widow whenever he wasn't near his team. In my opinion, Meko was not very effective during this set, and he only became more of a burden to the rest of his team when the Dragons did run any sort of Sombra composition, whether DM would play her or Ding. As we all know, D.Va is practically useless when she's hacked. The only thing she's good for is giving ult charge to the enemy. Again, I understand the reason why you'd probably want to run a D.Va, but the NYXL in my opinion should have stuck with what's been working by having Sabiobi play over Meko. While D.Va is an effective counter to Pharah, there's other ways to shut her down, you know. Ana and Sombra can be very effective counters to the character as well. All it takes is one good hack or sleep dart and the Pharah's done for. Ana in general though is really good for pressuring Pharah because her sniper rifle can constantly hit her enemies at long ranges while delivering good damage. And we know how skilled Jonik is using Ana, so it wouldn't be much of a problem for the likes of him. The NYXL straight up threw, and it goes beyond the things I've discussed. Anyone else care to explain why the NYXL thought it would be a good idea to run traditional goats at certain points during the match when competent Sombra play has proven to destroy it? Also, why did they continuously run goats into the Dragons multi-DPS comps when it clearly was not working? The Dragons were running a fair amount of Doomfist, Widow, Sombra, and Pharah. It's really difficult to roll a multi-DPS comp on goats when every person on the enemy team is all split up and they have really good mobility. What are you supposed to do if DM has all the space in the world on Widow, while Ding and Youngjin are constantly bullying the tanks and supports? There's absolutely nothing the NYXL could have done there. If you choose to focus on DM with Winston or D.Va, then the Doomfist, Sombra, or Pharah is going to cut down your backline. If you focus on the people harassing you on the front line, then DM will kill all the supports at a distance like he was doing all series long. It's not just the multi-DPS and Sombra comps that stomp the NYXL though. They also appear to be at the mercy of Shanghai's Orisa Hog comp with either two snipers or a Widow and Pharah on DPS. In my opinion, there was not nearly enough shield pressure. It was hard for them to break the bunker partially because they couldn't destroy the Orisa shield quick enough. The NYXL definitely should have swapped onto some DPS of their own. A double sniper comp of their own could have worked wonders. As we all know, Hanzo can do a lot of work on enemy shields, but also, Nene's Widow and Libro's Hanzo could have put a lot of pressure on both DM and Ding, and these were the two guys giving New York problems, so slowing them down or completely taking them out of the equation would have been a big help. The NYXL have really talented DPS players, we all know this. I have no doubt that Nene and Libro could have held their own. I apologize to any New York fans watching this video, but your team threw this game. The strategies they implemented were either awful or poorly executed. The players overall on the NYXL did really poorly. Nobody stepped up when this team was in desperate need of a carry. Again though, I can't say it's all on the NYXL for their loss. That would be unfair. Shanghai played a really good game. As mentioned earlier, their DPS were popping off. DM and Ding in particular had themselves a night. DM was killing Animo and Jonek a lot on the Widowmaker. It was usually easy cleanup for his teammates whenever he opened up a fight with a pick onto one of the NYXL supports. Ding's Pharah and Sombra proved to be a nightmare as usual too. I also wanted to quickly apologize to both Koma and Luffy. On Wednesday, I called them out saying that the Dragons would lose because they wouldn't be able to keep up with Jonek and Animo, and they have made me eat those words. I apologize, Koma and Luffy. You guys had a really good set as well. One other thing that I quickly wanted to say regarding Shanghai is that Gamsu has proven to be a real thorn in the NYXL side. This playoff victory over them now puts Gamsu at 3-2 overall against them. How about some closing statements before I end the video? All I wanted to say is that I am very disappointed in the NYXL. Even through all of the choking and people not taking them seriously because of it, I've done nothing but praise these guys. I've continued to have the utmost faith in their abilities, but now I'm kind of at my breaking point with them. Every single time I praise them and show how much confidence I have in them, they do nothing but let me down with shortcoming after shortcoming in the playoffs. If I supported this team, then I would be feeling very concerned heading into the overall playoffs. 2 early playoff exits while tremendously underperforming against teams that completely outplay them is worrying to say the least. Other than their 2 hiccups against the Atlanta Reign and their so-called sandbagging in Stage 4 last year, the NYXL have been the model of consistency during the regular season. They always look so good, but the moment a playoff game comes up, their confidence seems to vanish. I honestly feel like it's a skill at this point. I've never seen anything like it. They're a completely different team in the playoffs. Their organization, synergy, and ability to be clutch just disappear out of nowhere. No amount of coaching seems to help either. They continue to make the same mistakes while looking extremely nervous. It's really sad too. You can tell how badly these players want to prove everybody wrong. They don't want to be seen as this team that can only dominate in the regular season. I'm at the point where I have zero trust in them right now. I honestly feel like they could easily lose in the first round of the overall playoffs right now. It really is a shame. We're kind of at the point where we say, hey look, the NYXL made the playoffs again. I wonder who they're going to lose to this time. This team has one more chance this year to prove why everybody should take them seriously. If the NYXL want people to not label them as chokers anymore, then they have to make a deep playoff run this fall. Period. If they suffer yet another early playoff exit, then they're done. they will be recognized as universal choking symbols in the league for the rest of their existence. Don't carry on the legend of the LW Blue Boys. Change what people think of you. Do not tarnish your legacy any further. If they can play the way they do during the regular season, then they will be a danger to the rest of the league. Their playoff struggles is the only thing that needs fixing. They're such a good team. Time to get over your playoff nerves, NYXL, or suffer the consequences of being a laughingstock. And with that being said, that is going to wrap up yet another installment of What is Wrong with Your Overwatch League team. If you enjoyed this video, then be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. As always, thank you all so much for watching today's video, and until next time, this is ATP, signing out. Peace.